There's a message on your phone you read 3 days ago. You haven't answered it. Not because you don't want to. You've picked up the phone maybe 40 times to answer it, and every single time you put it back down. The message is small, ordinary, the kind of thing you'd normally reply to without thinking. And somehow it has become the heaviest object in your house. You know exactly how this looks from the other side. You know they think you're angry, or that you stopped caring, or that you're the kind of person who just drops people. None of that is true. But explaining what's actually true feels harder than letting them believe the lie. So the phone sits there, face down now because you can't look at it. If you've ever done this, gone quiet on someone for days over something that didn't even warrant an hour, I want to walk you through what's actually happening in there. Because it isn't what people think it is. And it isn't what you think it is either. Let's start with the wrong explanation, because it's the one everyone reaches for. When someone disappears, we assume one of two things. Either they stopped caring, or they're doing it on purpose. Some quiet little punishment wrapped up to look like being busy. And sure, sometimes that's real. Some people genuinely check out and go cold on purpose. We'll come back to how you tell the difference. But for a huge share of these silences, the thing running the show isn't coldness. It's an emotion most of us were never given the right name for. And once you have the name, the whole strange behavior snaps into focus. There are two feelings that look almost identical from a distance, and they do completely opposite things to a person. The first one is guilt. Guilt says, I did a bad thing. Its eyes are on the action, and because it's pointed at something you did, it actually pushes you toward the other person. You want to apologize, you want to fix it. Guilt walks toward the door. The second one is shame. Shame says, I am a bad thing. It isn't pointed at the action anymore. It's pointed at you, the whole of you. And this is the part almost nobody understands, so listen close. Psychologist June Tangney spent decades studying exactly this split, and the finding is remarkably consistent. Guilt makes people move toward repair. Shame does the opposite. It produces an urge to shrink, to hide, to get out of sight entirely. Not to fix the moment, to disappear from it. That's not an excuse someone invented to dodge responsibility. It's one of the most reliable patterns in the psychology of emotion. Guilt reaches for the door. Shame locks it from the inside. So watch what actually happens to the person who goes quiet. They didn't wake up and decide to punish anyone. Something small happened first. They said something clumsy in a meeting. They left a message sitting a little too long. They made a mistake that, measured honestly, barely registers. But here's the switch that flips. Instead of landing as I made a mistake, it lands as I am a mistake. And the second that happens, the second it becomes about who they are instead of what they did, the instinct stops being explained and becomes vanish. They step into a small room and they close the door behind them. And because the thing they're afraid of is themselves, they lock it from the inside. Now they're safe. Nobody can see them. Nobody can confirm the worst thing they suspect about themselves. But look at what the lock actually did. It didn't just keep everyone out. It sealed them in, alone, with the exact fear that put them in there. The one moment they most need someone to knock and say it's okay, come out, is the moment they've made it impossible for anyone to reach the door. And every day that door stays shut, it gets harder to open. Not for the reason you'd think. The original thing didn't get worse. The clumsy comment is still just a clumsy comment. But now there's a second thing sitting on top of it, and the second thing is the silence itself. Because now, opening the door doesn't just mean explaining the mistake. It means explaining the mistake and the 3 days of silence about the mistake. And that second explanation feels enormous, way bigger than the first one ever was. So somewhere around day 3, a genuinely strange piece of math happens in their head. The apology it would now take to walk out feels so much larger than the apology the original moment ever needed that staying locked in starts to feel like the safer option. Like the door is protecting them. It isn't. It's just a smaller and smaller room. Now, here's the part that surprises people, and it's worth sitting with. The people who lock themselves in like this are very often not the ones who care the least. They're frequently the ones who care the most. The reliable one. The one who prides themselves on being easy, on never being a problem, on being the person who has it together. For someone whose whole sense of self is built on being the dependable one, a mistake doesn't feel like a mistake. It feels like the mask slipping. It feels like proof of a thing they've quietly feared the entire time, that underneath the competence they're actually too much, or a burden, or not really worth the trouble. And rather than say that out loud and risk hearing you confirm it, they'll take the silence every time. They'll let you think they're flaky, they'll let you think they're rude. Anything is more survivable than standing still while someone looks at the thing they can't stand about themselves. Meanwhile, on the other side of that locked door, you are not fine either. You're refreshing the phone, you're rereading the last thing you sent, checking it for the crime, and your brain is doing something you can't just decide to switch off. Because a human brain does not read silence as neutral. It reads silence as rejection. And rejection isn't only emotional. There's a well-replicated finding in social psychology that being excluded lights up some of the same neural machinery involved in physical pain. Your brain treats being cut off from someone almost the way it treats an injury. So if 3 quiet days genuinely hurt, you are not being dramatic. You're running the exact program you evolved to run the moment you sense you've been shut out. The pain is not a malfunction. It's a smoke alarm doing its job. And this is where it becomes a loop instead of a single event. The person eventually comes out guilty, braced for your anger. You're relieved, but you're also a little hurt, so you come back a little cool, understandable, human. But watch what the cool does to them. They read it through the one lens they own. See, I knew it. I knew I'd ruined it. Your completely reasonable coolness becomes, in their head, confirmation of the worst thing they believe about themselves, which makes the door just slightly easier to lock next time. Nobody in this loop is a villain. It's 2 nervous systems, each reacting to a story the other one can't see. So here's the turn, and it's the thing that changes how you look at all of it. The whole time, it feels like the silence is protecting the relationship, buying time, keeping the peace until they can figure out how to come back. It isn't. Read it again. The silence was never protecting the relationship. The relationship was collateral. What the silence is actually protecting is the story, the fragile idea the person has about who they are, the dependable one, the one who doesn't mess up. That's what goes into lockdown. That's what the door is guarding. And you, the friend, the partner, the person on the other end, you just happened to be standing near it when the lockdown started. That's why it doesn't add up when you try to make it about you. You're doing the math on how much you matter to them, and the silence has nothing to do with how much you matter. It's a measure of how loud their shame got when they thought they'd let you down. You are not hiding the mistake. You are hiding yourself. And that's the whole reason it doesn't work. So if you're the one who does this, who goes quiet not when life gets busy but when it gets hard, the most useful thing to know is that the disappearance was almost never actually required. The moment never needed 4 days. It needed 1 sentence. Something as small as, "I'm overwhelmed right now and I need a minute, but it isn't you." That single line does more repair than 4 silent days ever could. Not because it explains everything, because it hands the other person something to hold instead of a silence to fill in with their own worst guesses. You don't have to open the door all the way. You just have to slide 1 sentence under it. That's enough to stop them writing the story for you. And if you're the one who keeps waiting on someone like this, hold 2 things at the same time. The silence is real, and it's allowed to hurt you. You don't have to pretend it doesn't. And also, it is very often not a measurement of your worth. It's a measurement of how badly someone is drowning in a room they locked themselves into. The next time somebody goes quiet on you and none of it adds up, the question probably isn't "what did I do?" It's "what do they think they did?" Those 2 questions have different answers more often than anyone expects. Here's the thing I most want you to take with you. We all got taught how to apologize for the small, clean things. Spilling something, showing up late, breaking a cup. Somebody sat us down and gave us the words. Nobody ever gave us the words for the other kind. The kind where what you're apologizing for isn't a thing you did, but a fear that you, underneath it all, are the thing that's wrong. No one hands you a script for that. So when it happens, you improvise the only move that feels safe. You go quiet. You lock the door. But a locked door was never safety. It was just a smaller room, getting smaller, with the one person who could have told you it was okay left standing on the wrong side of it. You can open it. It opens from the inside. It always did. That's the part shame never lets you see. The lock you're so afraid of was never holding anyone out. It was only ever holding you in. And the sentence that opens it is so much smaller than the 4 days you'd spend not saying it. If any of this was you or someone you've been waiting on, tell me which side you landed on. The one who locks the door or the one who waits outside it? I think most people recognize themselves in one long before they'll admit the other. And if you know someone who goes quiet like this, don't chase them. Just knock once, gently, and let them know the door opens whenever they're ready. Sometimes that knock is the only thing that reaches through.